Hey, welcome back to the Far Outpost. All right, we're going to do something a little different today. We're going to talk about my first completed Ironman triathlon experience. I did Ironman Chattanooga 70.3, so a half Ironman distance. Typically, those are a 1.2 mile swim, a 56-mile bike into a 13.1 mile half marathon, and you get 8.5 hours to finish those. Because of the way Chattanooga is organized, it's a 1.4 mile swim. Because they need to launch you out of the rowing club, which is an extra few hundred yards up the river. And then it's a 56.5 mile bike, or 56.67 is what my bike computer said, into a 13.2 mile run. So everything's a little bit longer, which is perfect, because if it was shorter, right, people would give you grief about not finishing the distance. So the fact that it's longer is good. You get, again, 8.5 hours to finish that. So let's talk about it. Let's set the stage here, how this started. My wife and I are part of a Peloton Facebook group, and 2020, we would meet in New York, once a year or twice a year, just depending on the schedules everybody had. And during one of those events, 4 of the members of the group had just completed a half Ironman. 3 of them looked exactly like you would think. They were, tallest was 5'4". They were 100 pounds, soaking wet, and but one of them was my size. He was 6 foot. He was 280, in his late 40s, early 50s. And so at the happy hour, I pulled him aside and I said, "What made you even think that was possible?" And he just looked at me and said, "You can already do this, right? You just have to do the work, right? It's just about consistency and showing up every day." So that kind of lit a fire under me. I kind of felt like I was being called lazy without being, called lazy. So I set out in September of 19. My wife made me get a swimming coach. So I took swimming lessons for a few months, got to the point where I could actually swim, bought an outdoor bike. So not just the Peloton anymore, but bought an outdoor bike and set off. And then of course, everything changed in March of 2020. There were no events that year. So we just trained indoors basically. In 2021, well, I guess I should say before the world ended, 2 things happened that are relevant here. One is that I was able to do a sprint triathlon in San Diego. I got in the Pacific Ocean in the first time ever wearing a wetsuit, and I swam, and everything was fine. I had zero fear, right? Now fast forward a year and a half, and I couldn't get in the water. Like in 2021, I signed up for a sprint triathlon in Boulder. I couldn't get in the water. I signed up for an Olympic the next week, to try to redeem myself. Couldn't get in the water. I signed up for another Olympic after that. Couldn't get in the water. Signed up for the Boulder 70.3. Couldn't get in the water. I mean, it was just like flushing money down the toilet. I could ride all day long. I could run. I was, in the 10-minute mile range, which isn't fast, but for a larger guy, it's completely respectable. I had no issue with my times, but I couldn't get in the water. I just psychologically couldn't get in the water. I don't know. As I went through the year, I think it was much more about fear of failure overall than like fear of drowning. I mean, you're in a wetsuit, you're not going to drown, to just bob up and down, right? So 2021 was a really tumultuous up and down year. By the end of that year, I had finished one sprint. I had swam the whole course, biked the whole course, run the whole course, and then I came back a few weeks later and did an Olympic, so twice the distance. So it's a sprint is a half-mile swim, a 12-mile bike ride, and a 5K. An Olympic is a mile swim with a 26-mile bike ride and a 10K, so they double. And then of course a 70.3 is a little more than twice the Olympic. So by the end of 2021, I was good to go. I knew I could handle this. I knew I could get in the water. I'd overcome kind of the demons or the fears that everyone has with open water. And then in 2022, we moved to Indiana. So we come out to Indiana. We didn't do any events last year. We didn't do anything. And then in October, Tom invited me into the Plush Global Hit Squad, which is a pro triathlon team that has a bunch of novice age groupers such as myself. The pros obviously are sponsored. We pay to play, right? So think about this as like, your neighborhood softball team or, like a flag football team or something, right? So I joined up there. There's hundreds of people in this, and they're all over the country. I'm in the Midwest region, so all the people I've met here have been, around Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, St. Louis, places like that. So we come in this year, and the goal this year is to do a 70.3, period. End of story. I don't care about anything else. I start swimming, I start riding, I start running, I start dropping weight like crazy. I was 292 at my highest in October when the roster came out and I had made the team, and by the end of January I was 260, right? And then by the time I ran the race here, I was 245. So I've lost a considerable amount of weight. I will continue to lose weight. That part of the journey isn't over, but this is the redemption story of a couple of weird years, and taking a non-athlete. I don't consider a Peloton rider that lifts weights in his basement gym to be an athlete. I consider that just to be a weekend warrior, or a hobbyist, right? Someone that enjoys trying to increase their strength or increase their FTP on the bike, but not really an athlete per se. This is the same thing when you talk about some of the guys. Look at this. We talk about like Bruce Lee versus Chuck Norris, right? Bruce Lee had all the moves and he gets all the glory and everything, but Chuck was an 8-time world champ. He proved it in the ring. I think to be an athlete, you need to get on the course and you need to prove it against all the other athletes that are out there, as opposed to running in your perfectly air-conditioned basement on a well-hydrated, good night's sleep in your own bed, right? You need to travel, you need to make it tough. I think for the strength athletes that are watching this, Brian Shaw says that a lot about events. It's not about going there and having the best deadlift. It's about sleeping in a horrible bed in a bad hotel where you don't have access to good food and you're dehydrated from the travel, right? So that's what Chattanooga was. Anyway, let's talk about Chattanooga real quick here. So the first thing we have is travel. My wife did agree to go. She's always just the best at taking care of me and making sure that I'm well positioned for success. I didn't like force anyone to go. I was willing to go it alone, but the fact that she agreed to go helped, because she drove there, she drove back. It's I feel like it's a 7-hour drive, but then once you put in stops, it's closer to 8 or 8.5. We did go to see Buc-ee's. We went to the Buc-ee's in Tennessee. I'd never been to a Buc-ee's before. If you get a chance to do that, it's like a gas station or amusement park. So the travel was uneventful. We drove out on Friday. We got there before check-in closed. Actually, we got there right as check-in opened. Typically with these events, the way that it works is there's a couple thousand participants, like 2,000 tops. And if you show up on a weekday, a Thursday or Friday for check-in, you get a very low bib number, which means you have a forward spot to rack your bike. You're closer to the entrance and exits. So it's strategically important to be early in the check-in process. And also you don't have the just the pandemonium of these villages once they get a couple thousand people with their families, with their teams, with their coaches, right? With all the other people that come with them. But in this case, instead of 2,000, they sold 3,500 spots. And everybody, not just locals, everyone showed up on Friday. So we got there and the check-in line was snaked through the entire village. I mean, I was several hundred people back. And even though I was there when it opened, my bib number was 1,343 on a Friday right after they opened. So that was really, I was not expecting that. The lowest bib number I'd ever had in my life was like 1,000 before, and that was showing up on a Saturday afternoon, right? For an event I couldn't finish. So there we go. So the travel was good. The check-in was good. I got a shirt. This shirt has all the names on the back of it. So my name's on the back of this. I wanted that for, souvenir. I got a hat. These hats sold out. I had a lady. Let me splice in a story about this hat. All right. So the best thing from this weekend so far, I was in the expo or the village, and you could see this hat. They sold out of these hats yesterday. They probably had 1,000 of them, but there's, over 2,500 athletes here. And a lady really wanted to buy it, and she was trying to explain to the helper, to go look for one, and the lady didn't know what she was talking about, so she went into the checkout line and grabbed it off my head and then walked away with it. And I was like, hey. She was like, I'm just trying to show her what I want to buy. That was pretty cool. I feel like in Denver you would get shot, and I feel like in California you would get punched dead in the face if you did that. But here in Chattanooga, we're all friends here. I got it back, but that was the craziest. I've never had someone just walk up and rip something off my head to go, have a personal shopper find it for them. Have a great weekend, everybody. All right, so now we're back. That was funny. I got a kick out of that lady. But anyway, so I got some souvenirs. I didn't get a finisher shirt because at that point in time, one, I didn't want to jinx it. And two, I wasn't sure I was going to finish. I knew I had peaked correctly. I knew I had trained. The training plan I did is the 80-20 triathlete. So it's 3 build weeks followed by a deload, 3 build weeks followed by a deload, just like powerlifting, right? The first week is, 8-9 hours. Second week is 10-11 hours. Third week is 13-14 hours. Then that deload week, you go all the way back down to 8 hours, right? And then you build it back up again. So I did that. I felt peaked. I felt strong. I felt like I could go forever, but mentally, I wasn't 100% sure that everything was going to go the way that it needed to go, right? There's just too much. There's weather, there's flat tires on the bike, there's broken chains, there's car crashes, there's dogs, there's all kinds of stuff that can happen in these events. And I didn't want to buy something that said I had completed it before I had completed it. I just didn't want to jinx it. And remember, I've got 2 years of what I feel like is letting people down. Every time I come home from an event without a medal, I feel like I'm letting all these people down. And some people that are, you know your friends, right? Some people that never believed I could do it anyway, every time I come home without a medal, they're like, see, fat guy, what's he doing? And then the other people are just people that want you to succeed but are let down. So I wasn't going to do anything to jinx it. I got through check-in. My wife and I got some really good street tacos. I don't know the name of the place, but man, those were phenomenal. And then we went back to the hotel. So we had got an Airbnb and a hotel because we had other people traveling to support my son. My middle son, Brian, and my nephew, Jared, also came along. And so we needed to have multiple places. So we gave them the Airbnb. We took the hotel because it was right by transition. And then we went to bed. I must have gone to bed at 7:30 with an alarm clock set for 4. I got up at 4 in the morning, and the first thing that popped into my head was, what are you doing? This is stupid. You shouldn't do this. Nobody cares if you do this. And I remembered the Kobe. I'm going to put the Kobe in right now. Hopefully this won't get copyright blocked.
I'm not negotiating with myself.
Yeah.
The deal was already made. The deal was made. When I set out at the beginning of the summer and said, this is the training plan I'm doing, I signed that contract with myself. I'm doing it. Throughout that process, you'll start talking to.
All right, so I'm not negotiating, right? I got out of bed, I jumped in the shower, I put on my tri kit, and I'm telling you right now that a team tri kit, when you realize that you're not playing for yourself, you're playing for points that go to a national ranking for your team. It's just a different feeling. As soon as I zipped that thing up, man, I was dialed in. I went and I made 2 peanut butter and banana sandwiches and 4 bottles of water with Tailwind in them. So Tailwind is like a salt and calorie mix because you've got to get nutrition on the bike or you'll bonk. I took all that, gathered it up, kissed Lisa, and went out probably about 4:30. I went to transition. I put everything on my bike, electrical taped the sandwiches to the bike tube, to the top tube, got all the water on it, got on the bus, went to the swim. And as soon as I got off the bus for the swim, I had zero doubt that I was finishing this race. It was almost like an out of body experience. Like I felt so good. I've just never felt that good before in my life as far as like being ready for an event, right? So get in the water, and I'm hoping to do a 48-minute swim, 1.5 miles, 1.4, so just a hair under 1.5 miles. And I'm hoping to do it in 48 minutes. I jump out of the water at 55 minutes. So I felt really, really, really good. That's 7 minutes off. 7 minutes in an 8.5 hour day is nothing, right? So I jump out of water. Lisa's there to tell me that I'm doing great, that everything's going well. I lay down on the ground and the wetsuit strippers strip your wetsuit off. And then you're just in your team kit and you're ready to fly. It took me 11 minutes to get up around all the obstacles into my bike, get on my bike, and then get out to start, which I again saw Lisa cheering me on, which just made me feel really good. And so I go and I ride the bike, and I realize very quickly that I'm not ready for the hills, right? Like this is a course that's very much like Boulder, Colorado, 2,500 feet of elevation over a little over 56 miles. And I just was getting my butt kicked. I can't tell you how many times I would get up on somebody and then just feel like I was just like locked up, and they would wave me past, and I would have to say like, hey man, I got the bike, but I don't think I got the legs. Like if I go past you, you're just gonna repass me. And it's in a peloton, if you're pulling for someone, so you get in front of them to block the wind for them and you pull them for a while and then they go in front of you and pull you for a while, that would be one thing. But triathlon's an individual event. If I go in front of them and slow down, I'm only hurting their day. So it's better to just hang back and stay out of their way. So I passed 182 of the 3,500 people on the bike. I saw 2 really bad accidents. One, a pedestrian walked in front of the course. That pedestrian, I don't believe that pedestrian made it. The cyclist went to emergency surgery because when you're going 30 miles an hour on a bike, you can't stop. And 30 miles an hour hitting anyone is a bad thing. And then the other one was a truck hit a cyclist, but the truck was rendering aid. So I don't think it was like a a person that didn't like people that want to be fit. You know, like we get a lot of trucks and motorcycles that want to run us off the road and cause trouble. I don't think it was like that because the trucker was rendering aid. I think that was just probably didn't see him. And these weren't closed roads. This was 56 miles through the mountains of Georgia. One lane was closed for us, one lane was open for them for most of it, but the last 30 miles, all the lanes were open and you just had to play nice. I never had any close calls outside of my bike. Handlebars fell. I went over a graded part of the road where it's graded so that if you weave out of your lane, it'll wake you up or let you know you're weaving out of your lane. When I went over and I hit that because of my, still being 245, when my bike started shaking on that, the handlebars folded down and I almost went off. But luckily I was able to just sit back and, and use my bike handling skills to get out of that. Once I was able to slow down, I adjusted my handlebars and rode the rest of the way. There weren't any other issues on the bike. I finished the bike 30 minutes slower than I was trained for. 30 minutes is a lot in an 8.5 hour race. So 7 on the swim is no big deal, but 30 on the bike's a lot. That is my strongest discipline by far. And there was just a 10 mile per hour headwind. So there's only so much you can do. You've just got to push more watts into the headwind. I gave it everything I had. I wasn't ashamed of myself, but when I ran by Lisa, so I go in, it took me 7 minutes then to rack the bike, change shoes, get the helmet off, put a hat on, get another half of a peanut butter sandwich, and then start jogging out for the run. I went by Lisa and said, how long do I have? And she gave me the time of 3:18, and I couldn't believe it, not because I didn't think she was telling me the truth. It's because I didn't know the bike took me. I just couldn't imagine the bike took me that long. And of course, to find out later that I'd lost a half hour, well, there you go. I thought I would have 4 hours left for the run. And so to only have 3:18, I lost a lot of time on the bike and a lot of time in transition. The two transitions together are 20 minutes, then another 30 on the bike, then another 7. I mean, that's, you're almost at an hour at that point. So that's sometime how your day goes. When I got on the run, it was a really, really hilly course, like really hilly. And I had watched all the, the pre-race tips where they told you to walk the hills, run the downhills, walk the hills, run the downhills. It started with 1.5 miles uphill. The race director told us that. And let me put in something about the athlete briefing real quick. All right, here we go, everybody. T-minus probably, 20 hours at this point. We're getting ready. We're all checked in, bikes dropped off, athlete check-in's done. I've spent all the souvenir money that we're gonna spend on this trip. You can see I go up here, you can see the river behind me. So we're out here for the athlete briefing. Those red cones right there are where we swim around. So we come all the way down the river, swim around, duck in there. Then we run that path up, around, and then the bikes are back there. And then it's 60 miles through Georgia before a half marathon run. Lisa's birthday today. Everyone say happy birthday to Lisa. All right, man. Catch y'all on the flip side. Talk to you either Sunday night or Monday. Woo, woo. This is it. There you go. So anyway, the athlete briefing, he told us, he's like, you're going to start out with 1.5 miles uphill. Just walk it. He's like, don't, you're going to be so tired after the bike. Don't put yourself in the hurt locker, right? So I did that. I got through it. Lisa saw me as many times as she could on the run. I actually asked the boys not to run with me because I was worried about getting disqualified. Again, Ironman is an individual sport. You have to be self-assisted. You're not allowed to get anything from anyone. And so I was worried that if the boys ran with me, it would look like I was being paced. And then come to find out, there were 2 different spots on the run. One where somebody was running with a pro. Their coach was running with them over the wood bridge. I can't believe that happened. And they have it on their YouTube channel. So apparently nobody cares. And then 2, someone I was finishing it up with, her husband met her with their baby in a stroller, and they ran all the way through the park, which was, he was with her for almost 2 miles that we were all together. And I obviously I didn't say anything. It's none of my business, but that was crazy. If I had known that was allowed, I totally would have had the boys pace me. Why not, right? They're in really good shape. And I would have had Lisa probably meet me there's probably some other places she could have popped into, but I just wanted people to be respectful of the rules. I didn't want to get in trouble. And I think that the last thing I want to say about the race here real quick is that this thing is all mental. If you're thinking about doing one of these, and you're looking around and you're looking for examples of kind of what you need to look like or what you need to train like or how fast you need to go, none of that matters. There's people that are all different shapes and sizes on this course. There were only 2,906 finishers, which means almost 600 people didn't finish, either didn't get to the start line in the morning One guy didn't make it because he lost his timing chip in the Airbnb, I guess. So there's people that didn't start. There's people that didn't finish the swim. One guy on the Facebook page said that he was at 125, so he was over the time limit, and they pulled him out of the water. Tons of people DQ on the bike, tons. They get a flat tire and they're not prepared to change it. They break their chain on the uphills. They grind too much. They don't shift quick enough, and it pops their chain. Their day's over. They wreck. My handlebars falling down could have ended my day. I just wasn't gonna let it. But I'm sure that anyone else that had their handlebars drop going 20 plus miles an hour downhill, they would have stopped at that point and said, we're done today. I had too much riding on this. I wasn't willing to stop. But that stuff happens. And then on the run, somebody stopped this year. They were ahead of me on their course. They'd done 8 miles in 2 hours. So they were running a little over 4 miles an hour, a little over 15-minute mile. They had started before me. So they were ahead of me on the course, and they didn't have a spotter. They didn't have a Lisa telling them how much time they had left. So they didn't think they had enough time to finish. So they pulled themselves out of the race, went in, turned their timing chip in. The village told them they still had time to finish, and they wouldn't give them their timing chip back to go finish. They're just DQ'd. Once you take your chip off and leave the course, you're DQ'd, right? So people fail at these for all kinds of reasons. Almost none of them are physical. It's all mental mistakes, mental unpreparedness, nutritional unpreparedness, right? So if you're thinking about doing this, that's the game you want to practice. Look, anyone can sit on a trainer in their basement on Saturday morning and ride for 3 hours. We all do it every weekend. There's people that do that just to get ready for fondos and just to stay in shape in the winter, right? Doing 8.5 hours of work in a day in your house is not the game. The game here is mental grit, being able to have holes where I bled through the back of my shoes and I wasn't stopping, right? So being able to have holes in your feet from blisters and from just, wearing the wrong socks that day, and you've got to finish no matter what. There's videos of ladies crawling over the finish line in Hawaii. Like, you mentally, that is the game. Mental grit. And I'm glad to say that I feel like I have that now. So I'm going to tell you one funny story, and then we'll do some QAs real quick. So in February of 2020, I went to Huntington Beach, California, and I ran a half marathon. I did not drink water the day before because I'm an idiot. So I had run a bunch of half marathons at the local track, right, at my house. I had never run more than like a 2:10, 2:11, right, something in the 12-minute mile range. I had never run anything slower than that. I had never needed special hydration. I could run it with a Diet Coke in my hand and finish. And when I went out to Huntington Beach, the humidity's different, the weather's different, the heat's different, and the night before we went out and partied. Now, when I say look, I'm old. So we went out for dinner and drank with friends, right? So I get up the morning of the race. I feel great. I start the race way too fast. I'm talking like 9-minute miles, and I should have started slowly and warmed up. And by the end of that race, I had completely bonked. I was completely dehydrated, completely sunstroked. I came in at 2 hours and 45 minutes. And when I sat down afterwards, I got my medal. I sat down and the adrenaline wore off and I passed out. And my buddy got me in his car, gave me a Smart Water, took me to an ice cream shop where he got me a sweet waffle with a scoop of ice cream on top of it. And by the time I finished that waffle, my blood sugar was back up. I felt like $1 million. But that was one of those instances where hydration in travel, this is what we talked about earlier, right? The tough part's not the contest. The tough part is everything that you've got to do to be ready to go in this strange environment. So when I got here, I finished the race. I went and sat with Lisa. I had so much water and ice and everything that when I sat down, I left like a water print, like a body-sized water print. I was completely drenched. But I was super dehydrated and just ready to bonk. I mean, the 8 hours and 20 minutes is what it took me. And so Lisa and I, we get my bike. The boys help me get all my gear. We start walking back to the hotel, and I tell her that I just need to sit down. And she thinks that I mean like I'm tired because I've put out all this effort. But what I really meant was that I was lightheaded. I just couldn't say it, right? So I sit down. We don't think to have anyone stay with me. And she goes back to the hotel with the boys to load everything up and then come get me. And the next thing I know, I'm seeing this lady run at me like through a fog, like it was like a fuzzy lens, like in a movie. And she's running at me and she's like, "Do you need help?" And I'm like, my wife is coming to get me. But what it sounded like to her was, so she's like, do I need to call 911? And I'm like, no, the hotel's right there. And so she gets me up, she gives me water, I dump the water over my head, and she's like, do we need to stay with you? Are you in trouble? And I'm like, no, my wife's gonna be here in a couple minutes. I'm good. And then I prop myself up on the bench, just like a park bench. And then the next thing I know, I'm like leaning over the park bench, and Lisa comes and gets me. So, couple things, folks. Figure out what bonking means to you, and what dehydration means to you, and what sunstroke means to you, and bring those things. So when we go to the next event, the next time I do one of these, we're gonna bring like some sweets, like some sugary sweets, and probably like some real soda, something with like sugar in it, not diet soda, but like some real soda. Put it on ice, and then as soon as I cross the finish line, once Lisa's done hugging me, she's gonna, shove a Twinkie in my mouth or something to keep me from bonking. So there you go. I think for hydration, the entire day, I had the two peanut butter and banana sandwiches, which were 400 calories. And then I had 100 calories of Tailwind in each bottle, so another 400 calories. So that's only 800 calories. But understand that you're also drinking Gatorade on the course, which is like 160 calories a bottle. And you're drinking a bunch of bottles of that. You're drinking real Coke on the course. They've got bananas. They've got fig bars. There's no reason for you to bonk outside of just you not preparing your stomach to handle that. A lot of people, when they get to the run, their stomachs will lock up on them and they can't take in any more food. That's on you. You should be eating while you're running and training to make sure that you can take in whatever food you need when you get out in the sun and in the wind. So, all right, so now we have some questions for you. Let's answer some questions.
Question 1. What did you learn about yourself?
Yes, I think what I learned about myself most is that I don't need to have self-doubt around these types of activities, right? Though I think everyone has a little bit of self-consciousness, even if you appear to be really confident or really capable. There's still a little piece of you that until you do something, you just don't believe that you can do it. The 2 days after this, I still woke up thinking it was a dream. I woke up thinking someone was going to tell me it was April 12th, and it hadn't really happened yet. And so now that I believe it, now that I know it happened, I don't think I'll have a problem with a 70.3 again. I think you could give me 8 weeks, and as long as I'm in some type of base building, I could turn it on in 8 weeks and finish at 7.3 at this point.
Do you consider yourself an athlete now?
I do. For the first time in my life, I actually do consider myself an athlete. I've always thought of myself as a musician, right? I've got recordings you can buy on something. Neil, where can they buy Shadows music? So I've always thought of myself as a performer or a musician, or a public speaker, right? But this is the first time in my life that I've actually felt like I've proven it in the ring. I've proven it on the course. I've gone out there, and like I say, 600 people decided it wasn't for them, and I decided it was for me. So yes, 100%.
So what's next?
So next is 7 weeks from now, we're going to go to Ohio, and we're going to do the Ohio 70.3. That'll be my second Ironman 70 point half distance. It's a totally different animal. It's a Lake Erie swim, so it will not be a give me. I did 2 swims a week to get ready for Chattanooga. I will be doing 4 swims a week to get ready for Ohio. My shoulders are going to be burning, which is going to also put me in the gym a lot more. I was so concentrated for Chattanooga on being as small as possible that it's going to be fun now to continue to lose body fat while building my upper body to be able to handle I'm going to have to do 900 strokes to get through that swim, and I'm only going to have an hour and 10 minutes. So Ohio 70.3, Sandusky, July 23rd, 2023.
So do you think you'll try a full Ironman?
I would like to. I'm signed up for a full this year. I'm not talking about it, but it's late season full. And I signed up for it for 2 reasons. One is because Ironman will allow you to defer one time. And so, and the prices have just been getting crazy. So I kind of thought about it like, I want to do one this year or next year. If I sign up now, I can lock in the price. And then if I need to defer to next year, I can. So yes, I would say 1 full is in my future, just so I can get the forehead tattoo that says Ironman, but then that'll be it. This is not a the reality of this for me is that even though Lisa and I are both in IT and we're fairly employed and stuff, and we have, you know, good educations and good careers, this is way too expensive. Like, each of these events is like $2,000. It's a family vacation every time you go to compete, and that's not what we're looking for at this point in our lives. At this point in our lives, we're looking for relaxation. So, but I will do one just to get it.
Do you feel this has been a transformative process?
Yeah, I think mentally, I think before this I had no idea what I was capable of, meaning that everyone, you know, we always joke in our family about American Ninja Warrior when they're doing the salmon ladder, and everybody looks at it and they're like, come on, I can do that. But the reality is, no, you can't. And that's kind of how I felt about triathlon. I felt like, you know, I'd watch it on outside TV, or I'd watch it on YouTube, and I'd be like, oh, come on, man, what are they doing? They're just riding a bike and then running really fast. That's like, anyone can do that. But the reality is, no, not anyone can do this. And so I think I just really feel like in the space of a half Ironman or an Olympic or a sprint, I feel invincible right now. It's just weird. I just feel so good. So yeah, I would say it's been absolutely transformative. I'm glad I did it. It's been worth every trip to the pool. It's been, I mean, I've gone through like 4 bikes because I've crashed and I've changed my mind and I've bought the wrong size. And I mean, there's been so much that I've had to learn by doing and learn the hard way. And I would do every single bit of it again, man. This has just been wonderful. So, hey, thanks for stopping by. I'm going to put as much B-roll as I can in these things. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave them. And appreciate it. Have a great week, everyone.
Got another Plush Global Triathlete coming on down. Not far at it.